Dan here from the paintballpost.com, and today we're going to look at the best paintball guns under $500. Now, we're going to do this in categories starting at the sub $100 range. I do recommend you pop over to the paintballpost.com and check out the written article on this subject. As mentioned in the article, I'm going to be using A&S gear for pricing. We have no affiliation with A&S gear. I live in Canada. I needed somewhere that had US dollars. $100 and under. This is a tricky price point. If you're shopping under $100, be very careful. There's a lot of junk. Just straight up a lot of junk. But if you're shopping new, this is going to be one of your best bets, is the Azoden Chaos 3. Azoden, they're known for, entry-level spider clones. But, oh man, for $100, I cannot begin to explain how much better this is than the spiders that I started with. We've got a actual clamping feed neck, a real regulator, bolt out the back with a single pin. This is wonderful. Now, Azoden is known for not having the most robust regulator seats, so be aware that you will have to rebuild that a bit sooner than I would like, but it actually comes with a regulator. This isn't just a gas-through grip. This is wonderful for this price point. Now, if you are looking for something on the used market, you might, if you are patient, you might be able to find yourself a used invert mini. Minis are awesome. Minis are great, but you will be probably looking at something that is some pretty good wear and tear if you're looking under $100, but it can be worth it, right? You've got eyes, you've got a clamping feed neck, you've got regulated air, hoseless, bolt out the back, all this stuff that we used to take for granted. It's wonderful. So they do hold up to their name. Just be careful if you're like myself. I'm way too tall to be using a mini. It just does not fit my hands really well. I do clang, my thumb into my fingers on my other hand. It's just not comfy for me. Your mileage may vary, especially, if you're a brand new player and you're a kid. Grabbing one of these, they're incredibly light. Speaking of light, in the $100 to $200 range, we have the GOG Enemy. I love these. They're so light on paint, you can put your finger in the breech and pull the trigger and it just bounces right off. You try that with that Azoden we talked about a second ago, you're going to have a bad day. You're going to bruise yourself up, right? Avoid the packages that these come with. They do come with a mediocre barrel in terms of the length, but it is polished well enough. It's not actually going to be less accurate than anything else on the market. We're going to have an article on that in the near future. But the big thing here is they are just fun. If you're a returning player, say you started off with something like an autococker back in the day, you're going to feel right at home with this because the bolt stays forward as you're holding the trigger down and then comes back. And by separating those two actions, these have an incredibly smooth shot. They are really, really quiet. Again, they are easy on paint, but they are a bit of a hog on air. So if you're planning on using like a 48 3000 tank, you might find that you're running out of air pretty quickly on these, but you're going to have a blast. And compared to something like a Tippmann 98, especially if you're buying a paintball gun for your kid, those things are just too long and they can be a bit awkward. These things, they're not as small as the Mini, but yeah, they are really, really light. Again, now the feed neck on these, it is an Allen key to clamp onto the feed neck, but it is clamping nonetheless. We're not dealing with the old stovepipes that just you have to slide your hopper in and hope. These are quite nice for the money, and I'd say at any price. If you're looking for just a toy, right? I'm going playing with my nephew, and they are going to be renting, and they don't want me to bring my Intimidator because it's intimidating, right? Grab one of these things. They're wonderful. On the used side in this price range, Empire Axe, all the way. We've got another video coming in the near future, but we already have an article over here on the Axe. The Axe platform, just like we were talking about a second ago with the Mini. We've got eyes. We have, in this case, toolless bolt removal. An amazing trigger for semi-auto, plus all of your tournament modes. These things are just as at home in the woods as they are on the speedball field. You will never need another gun unless you want it. They keep up with everything. These were, when they were released, used by multiple pro teams. These things did keep up. They shoot great. They are very soft on paint. They have a very soft shot. Right? You set these things to 180 psi and crank the back cap a little bit to compensate for that, and you'll think you're shooting low. It's wonderful. I have one. My wife has one. They are just wonderful. And they are nice and stretched out. So versus the Mini that I find to be way too small, this is getting into, I've seen it actually side by side to a G6R, which we're known for being pretty long. They're right about there if you go from the front of the foregrip to the back of the rear grip. It's great. Moving on, we've got the $200 to $300 range. This is, without a doubt, the best deal in paintball right now. This EMEC 100 kit here on ANS. Again, no affiliation with ANS. I don't make $1 if you buy this. This is crazy for this price. You're getting not only one of the best mechanical guns on the market, period. It's not a good for the price like something like the Enemy, where I'm a big fan of that Enemy. This thing is far more robust. It has a better feed neck. The bolt system is much more efficient. I would say the Enemy is quieter, but this also comes with a 14-inch two-piece shaft barrel at this price. This is probably going to be quieter in the end, just because it has barrels don't really affect your accuracy, but they heavily do impact. They heavily impact your sound signature. So having that 14-inch barrel can make it a bit easier to aim, and it's going to quiet you down. Top it off with that Speedster loader. Now we're doing a rundown on all of the best loaders out there for every price point, just like we're doing here for the sub $500 markers. This thing is my number one recommendation in its price point because, again, they are incredibly hard to break. These things just work. They're a little on the slower side, but if you're playing mechanical, that's not as big of a deal, especially if, you're on a bit more of a budget. You're not going to be shooting a ton of paint. That's just kind of how it works. And much like the Enemy, these things are incredibly easy on paint. You can load this thing up with the most brittle drop from your waist tournament style paint, and it's going to work. These things are great. The lids on them are incredibly robust. They are designed to be abused by renters, both the gun and that loader. Everything about this at this sub $300 range is wonderful, especially when you take into account two other factors. One, this is the same price as a regular EMEC 100. So this package is 100% worth it. I don't normally like to say, oh, it comes with some free stuff, because it's included is usually the better term. But legitimately, you can go and you can buy a regular EMEC, or you can get yourself a free barrel and loader. The other side of it is, if you want that tactical, aren't I cool mom look, $10 more, and you get the EMC kit with a slightly different barrel, longer barrel, more porting than the stock one that comes with the EMEC 100, the EMC kit, and a Speedster loader for $10 more than just getting a regular EMEC 100. These things are wonderful. At this price point, you cannot go wrong. Now, if you are shopping at this price point, this is where we start to get into some weirdness. You could get yourself an EMEC for about $200. I haven't seen them go for much less than that because they do hold their resale value pretty well. A paintball gun holding 60% of its resale value is actually pretty good. So $200 for a used EMEC, I'd probably point you to the new one, especially if you don't own a loader. Spend the extra $90. Get yourself a warranty. It's new, it's yours, and that barrel. But an ETHA 2, seen here, it's essentially the electric version that started it all, right? This is where they took the Gamma Core out of the G-Tech, moved it into a less expensive to make body, let it rip. So great marker as well. But if you want to go mechanical, I would definitely, in this price point, I would go new, actually, which is seldom what I recommend. Yeah, going brand new in this case, though, the value's there. And because these hold their value, you're not really saving a lot going used unless you want to go electric. Speaking of, up next in our $300 to $400 range, we have the Axe 2.0. You might be saying, I've got a bit of a type. I've recommended the Mini, the Axe, and now the 2.0. It's because they work, right? I have an Axe that I use as my backup. The 2.0 is awesome. Now, it's hard to recommend the 2.0 because of how inexpensive the Axe is currently. Being able to get a Axe 1.0 for like $150, you're just never going to find a better $150 gun. It's really real difficult. But at $330 brand new, you get yourself a warranty. It's new, it's yours, nobody else has had it. And if you're not picky about color, yeah, $330, man, these are really good deals. I don't know how these are this cheap. If you look into it, when the Axe 1.0 was released, they were, I believe, a bit more expensive than the Axe 2.0, and that was a couple inflations ago. So, by all accounts, these are better and cheaper. I do say better. They made a few changes that I really like. The regulator's a bit smaller. They have that rubber foregrip, and the feed neck, even though it's polymer versus the aluminum from the original, it is a better feed neck. The original feed necks were a little hoopty. But we've got a much better system for the eyes, right? Having actual eye covers, great. And one of the few downsides of the original Axe was its barrel. Again, the barrel didn't really affect the accuracy of it, but it was 12 inches long. I prefer a bit longer, like a 14 that they come with now. And it was loud. Like I said, when I was talking about the Axe earlier, if you set these things to about that 180 mark, they feel like you might be shooting low because they're just that smooth. And it's really surprising, especially for a poppet marker. But it's just the nature of this pressure control poppet versus hitting someone with a rammer. It's just great to have that barrel calming that sound signature down, because the original one was very loud with the stock barrel. Nothing wrong with the stock barrel, just loud. On the used side, you can go two routes here in this $300 to $400 range. The Planet Eclipse Etha 3, these things are just great. There's no bad things to say about these other than, oh, but they have like the nylon bodies, I guess, right? But you don't. I wear gloves while I play, so I don't really notice if my gun's not made of metal. It also keeps the weight down. They come with a good barrel out of the box. They're, again, tournament ready. Unlike the original Ethas and the EMAC 100s, they've got a nice toolless back cap system here. Just overall, great shooters. But if you want a bit more of a full feature set, we've got this 6. Now, this is sort of the follow-up to the Axe Pro. Inside is essentially an Axe. We'll get to a bit of that later. But you've got, an OLED board. You have no visible screws other than, well, the feed neck screw, which we want. Those are actually really nice to have. And these recessed, robust screws for the eye covers, making them nice and easy. Right? We've got wraparound rubber grips on the front and back here. Yeah, they did a really good job with this gun that just did not catch on, and we'll get to why when we talk about it later. One of the big reasons, these are given out in a lot of sponsorship packages, and they've also been used as prizes at events. So there's a bunch of people out there who sold them brand new in box for less than they were selling for new at the store. Stores then have to bring them down, and it creates this problem. And this is a classic Empire move. They've done it before with the Vanquish. That's the reason why that thing had no resale value, is just they screwed the market up for themselves and somehow have not learned this lesson. But we'll get into that in another video. Empire has a bit of a habit with that. They make good gear, But oh man, do they ever know how to screw themselves over. When you move up to that 4 to 500 range, I also still recommend the 6. Again, internally, this is basically an axe. It's been upgraded a bit. It runs at a slightly lower PSI. We've got an article coming out in probably the next month or so on how PSI is a bit overrated. It's not as big of a deal. Like, oh, this one runs at 180 PSI and this one's at 160. The 160 must be better. No. However, if everything else is equal, lower PSI can be an improvement. So it does run at that lower pressure. The big change, though, is they changed the way the poppet system inside works. So we have a O-ring instead of a plastic cup seal or poppet seal. I don't think it's actually a cup seal. That O-ring, easy to replace. Those poppets were like $2. It's not a huge savings or anything like that, but it can really save the day to be able to get an off-the-shelf O-ring from the pro shop if you've got a gun issue versus having to see if they happen to have your gun's specific poppet seal. OLED board, wraparound rubber across the board on everything, all aluminum everywhere else that counts. Really nice case. Everything about the 6, other than the kind of weird looking foregrip. Everybody who's reviewed one of these has said, yeah, these feel great. They shoot awesome. Like, these things are just wonderful. That would be my recommendation if you were in that sub $500 range. These were supposed to be their answer to things like the 180R and the Shocker amp at the time and now Era. But these are cheaper by far than all of those. We're talking ETH 3 territory. If you want to spend a bit extra on an ETH 3, you can. Planet Eclipse is great. But feature for feature combined with just everything that they crammed into this thing, it's hard to recommend anything else in this $500 range on the new side of things. But used, we get to my personal gun, which is in this photo here. This is the MacDev Prime XTS. Now, there's been some wonkiness in the background similar to the 6 that drove the resale value of these things into the ground. I got mine for, I think I paid $450 with a full barrel kit. My second one, because this one is actually my second, I like these that much, was about $400 American. These are a crazy good deal. They are supposed to be a $1,400 new marker. But on the used market, they are competing against the stuff that is like $800 new. They have all of the features of your top-of-the-line markers, right from toolless eye covers, toolless bolt removal. We've got, you know, the thumb wheel on the feed neck, OLED back here. We've got the on-off ASA with that lever. We have amazing ergonomics. Yeah. Now, they are not for everybody. They have a very poppy, almost... They feel more like a poppet than an axe does. But they just... Yeah. Especially if you're playing semi-auto, there's something about you pull the trigger and you feel that it's shot. It's just wonderful. So if you're looking for the smoothest spool valve out there, not for you. But if you need a reliable tank that looks good, feels great in the hands, especially if you're on the taller side, and is way cheaper than it has any right to be, the Prime XTS is your answer. That's our roundup of sub $500 paintball guns. If you think we missed anything, feel free to throw it down in the comments. As I mentioned earlier, head over to thepaintballpost.com for the written article and more to come.